good. By all means, and I think students would say this, it's the World War I lecture. The World War I lecture I give in two parts. The crisis of July 1914, which begins on the 28th day of June with the assassination in Sarajevo, Bosnia, of the Archduke, the heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary, ends on the 4th of August 1914 when the British declare war on Germany. For my money, that period of time is short. The drama, human drama, the emotions almost defy the powers of description and at times almost defy the imagination. I tell the students, okay, put your pencils down, take your hands off the laptops. You're going to get a preview of coming attractions. You're not allowed to write anything, not allowed to type it, and I promise this will never be asked on an exam. So we go about the battles of the First World War, the major, the great, the mincing machine that takes place on the Western Front during 1914 at Verdun, at the Somme, and I end the lecture by singing to them two songs. One of them is called The Green Fields of France.
Did they beat the drum slowly? Did they play the fife lowly? Did they sound the death march as they lowered you down?
Gee, began as far as I'm concerned when I was a kid. I was always interested in politics, in current events, and the more and more I studied those things, the more I realized that history was behind them. It didn't do a lot of good to understand current events unless you knew what came before. I got my PhD from the University of Chicago in March of 1976. I gave the very first lecture of my life at Berkeley on, I think, the 22nd day of January 2003. There were no jobs available, really, in international history, diplomatic history. We don't say that anymore. It's international history. When I got my degree, so I was forced to take different jobs. And one job I finally got, which I liked, was working at Berkeley for the loan collection service. I collected student loans, and some of the people in my students and my colleagues know this. I made a deal with the bosses in the student loan office, which essentially was this. I would collect a lot of money if they would give me a 3-day work week, Friday, Saturdays, and Sunday. And I used those 3 days in the time I was with Billing and Payment Services, which was from 1986 to 2007, to write, 6 books. Now that's a bit of exaggeration. 3 of those books were edited, and other people contributed to them, and the other 3 were pretty short. When I wrote one in 2001, it caught the attention of the history department. Someone was going on leave, and they read about it in the Berkeleyan, and they asked me to come and lecture for this professor. Adamthwaite was his name. I did that. It was tough at first. I asked a student what he thought of the lecture I gave, and he said, I think it sucked. So this is what led to my talking to my colleagues and led to the experience with the mirror, going home and getting in front of the mirror. So no one would ever say that about the lecture I gave again. In history, the driving forces are not impersonal. They are real, live human beings. Things get done in history because individual and discoverable people decide things and do them. There is such a thing as evil and greatness in history, and that the deeds of a few are disproportionately important for all. I believe that. I try to convey it to my students with as much force, with as much conviction, with as much passion as I am capable of mustering, in the hope That's what it is, all a hope, that it will, to some extent, in some way, rub off on them by the end of the course. And more often than not, I like to think that it does.